He thought it was just another janitor shift, just another hallway, just another door. But that morning, a struggling single dad stepped into the wrong room and found himself face to face with a woman who wasn't supposed to see him, let alone ask him to stay. This isn't a story about riches or luck. It's about showing up when life falls apart and discovering that sometimes the smallest moments open the biggest doors. If you believe in second chances, quiet acts of kindness, and the kind of love that heals what the world has broken, then you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss a story that warms your heart and stirs your soul. Now take a breath and step through the door with us. Let the story begin. Struggling single dad opened the wrong door. His first day. The CEO smiled and said, "Stay with me." The elevator chimed softly as it arrived at the top floor of Hartwell Tower, the glass-paneled headquarters of one of the most powerful corporations in the Northeast. Jack Morgan stepped out, his worn leather boots squeaking slightly on the polished marble floors. He adjusted the collar of his second-hand button-down shirt and glanced at the crumpled paper in his hand. Floor plan department listings, arrows drawn in ink from someone who clearly didn't care to explain much. "Supply department room 1402, he muttered under his breath. Jack's shoulders hunched slightly, a posture born of too many years bearing burdens too heavy to share. He wasn't supposed to be here, not in the penthouse level reserved for executives. He'd taken this job not out of ambition but desperation. A full-time janitorial position with health benefits wasn't glamorous, but it would cover Lily's asthma medication. That was enough. He scanned the hallway, all sleek wood and chrome, every door looking identical. Spotting one slightly ajar, he tapped lightly and pushed it open. "Excuse me, is this?" The words died in his throat. The room was quiet, too quiet. No flicker of fluorescent lights, no hum of printers or clatter of keyboards. Instead, a massive window stretched from floor to ceiling, framing a canvas of blue sky and distant cityscape. The office smelled faintly of lavender and leather. At the far end, a woman stood with her back to him, her figure silhouetted against the glass. Dark hair pinned neatly at the nape of her neck, hands clasped behind her as if she were holding herself together. Jack took a cautious step back. "Sorry, I think I've got the wrong room," but the woman turned. Her eyes, cool and observant, locked onto his. She didn't look startled. She didn't even blink. Instead, her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Stay with me?" she said. Jack froze, hands still on the door handle. What I said," she repeated, stepping forward slowly, her heels clicking softly against the floor. "Stay with me." He let go of the door, uncertain. "Ma'am, I'm just the new guy, first day. They sent me up here for supplies, I think." "But you're in the wrong place," she said, and his heart sank. Of course he was, story of his life. But maybe it's the right time. She walked to the leather chair behind a massive desk, gesturing to the seat across from her. Jack hesitated, unsure if this was some kind of test. Still, he sat, his hands folding over his knees the way Lily did when she was nervous. The woman studied him for a moment before speaking. "I'm Evelyn Hart," she said. Jack blinked. Evelyn Hart, CEO. The Evelyn Hart. The name that appeared on magazines, interviews, stock reports. The name whispered with awe or envy. He straightened instinctively. "Miss Hart, I apologize. I didn't mean to barge in." "I know," she said simply, then leaned back. "But you did. And now I'm curious." Jack opened his mouth, then shut it again. What was he supposed to say to that? Evelyn's gaze wasn't the cold, distant kind he expected from a woman with a private elevator and a $3,000 blouse. There was a sharpness to her. Yes, but also something quieter, sadder, a kind of worn-out grace, like someone who'd been standing alone too long in a crowd that never saw her. "So Jack is it?" He nodded. "Jack Morgan, maintenance staff. You don't look like a janitor." Jack gave a tired smile. "I don't think there's a look for that." Evelyn tilted her head. "You're right, I'm sorry. That was presumptive." He shrugged. "No offense taken." A silence fell between them, not uncomfortable but weighted. Then she asked, "Do you have children, Jack?" He blinked again, thrown by the question. "Yes, one. My daughter Lily. She's 10. 10. Evelyn echoed, a wistful softness entering her voice. "That's a good age." Jack smiled without thinking. "She thinks so." Said she's halfway to being a grown-up, and I better enjoy the snuggle years while I can. Evelyn's lips curved again, but this time there was a tightness in her eyes. You're lucky Jack wasn't sure what to say to that luck had never been on his side. Not when Carrie got sick, not when he lost the shop, and not when he had to choose between groceries and electricity last winter. But Lily was the one good thing that made every stumble worth it. You're not like the people who usually sit in that chair, she said quietly. I don't imagine I am. She leaned forward, folding her hands on the desk. You probably won't believe me, Jack, but I didn't bring you in here to intimidate you or to be mysterious. I just... She looked away for a moment as if trying to find the exact weight of what she was about to say. I needed to talk to someone who doesn't want anything from me. Jack's brow furrowed. You thought I'd be that person, I hoped. The words hung between them like a fragile glass ornament suspended in midair. For a long moment, Jack simply sat there, unsure whether to laugh or feel sorry for her. He chose neither. Instead, he met her eyes. I don't know what this is, he said honestly, but I know what it's not. It's not something I expected when I woke up this morning. Evelyn nodded slowly, and then to his surprise laughed. It wasn't loud or polished. It was quiet, unguarded, and real. That makes two of us. She stood walking back to the window, folding her arms across her chest. Jack, I have a meeting in 10 minutes with people who will spend 45 minutes saying nothing and expect me to call it leadership. But this conversation, this feels more alive. He stood as well, unsure if he was being dismissed or invited. I guess I'll get to work, he said, voice low. Evelyn turned to look at him again, the city light casting gold across her face. One more thing, he paused at the door. I hope you come back tomorrow. Even if it's just to say, good morning, Jack nodded, offering a slight smile. Good morning, then he said and stepped out. The door clicked softly behind him, and in the silence that followed, Evelyn Hart, CEO, widow woman of Steel and Solitude, let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. The next morning, Jack Morgan stood outside the massive revolving doors of Hartwell Tower, coffee in one hand, nerves in the other. He'd slept poorly, torn between, wondering if yesterday's conversation had actually happened, and if so, what in the world it meant. Stay with me. Her voice still echoed in his head, soft but commanding. He wasn't supposed to talk to the CEO. Heck, he wasn't supposed to see the CEO. He'd been hired to fix broken things, not unravel the quiet mystery of a woman with a corner office and eyes that carried a storm. Jack stepped inside, greeted the security guard with a polite nod, and made his way to the supply department, as instructed. He spent the morning restocking break room paper towels and checking light fixtures, trying not to think about Evelyn Hart. But around 11, a call came through the intercom. Jack Morgan, report to 15. Immediately, no last name. No department, just the floor. 15, the top again. He glanced at the janitor's card as if it might somehow offer him advice, then sighed and wiped his hands on his pants. The elevator ride felt longer than yesterday. He tried to convince himself this was about a broken cabinet or a faucet dripping somewhere expensive. But in his gut, he knew better. The elevator doors slid open. Evelyn was waiting. She stood just beyond the reception desk, hands in the pockets of a tailored navy suit, hair drawn into another one of those perfectly unbothered knots. She looked calm, but Jack had learned something already. She wasn't what she appeared to be. Good morning, she said, her voice lighter than the day before, ma'am. He nodded. I wasn't sure if I'd see you again. I wasn't sure I'd call, she admitted, but here we are. He followed her down the quiet hall to her office. When they stepped inside, she gestured to a bookshelf near the window. You see that, she said, pointing to the lower corner. It's wobbly. I think the back panel's loose. Jack crouched, inspecting the frame. Looks like the nails are stripped. I'll need to reinforce it with some brackets. Good, you can take your time. He gave her a quick glance. You really want me to fix it? Or are we doing that thing again, where I'm fixing something else entirely? Her lips twitched. Maybe a bit of both. Jack removed the tools from his belt pouch and got to work. Evelyn walked to her desk, pulled open a drawer, and retrieved a small black box. She held it for a moment, as if weighing its contents, then opened the lid. Inside lay a wedding band. Jack caught sight of it in the reflection from the window. His hands paused just for a second. You were married, he said softly. Not as a question, I was. She closed the box gently, placing it on her desk. His name was Daniel. He died 3 years ago. Jack kept working, letting the silence breathe. He knew the shape of grief. It didn't always like to be spoken over. I'm sorry, he said finally. Evelyn sat in the chair opposite her desk, folding one leg over the other. He was the only person who ever saw me clearly. Before the titles, before the boardrooms. He used to say I was like a snow globe, beautiful on the outside, but all the good stuff's hidden behind glass. Jack tightened the bracket with care. He sounds like someone worth remembering. I think that's why I can't let go. She paused. I didn't bring you up here to unload all this, by the way. I'm just tired of talking to people who pretend they don't notice I'm breaking. Jack sat back on his heels. You don't seem broken, no, she said, almost laughing. Then you're not looking closely enough. He met her eyes. Maybe I am. But I also know what it looks like to keep going when the world's moved on without you. Evelyn tilted her head. Tell me about her. Your daughter, Lily. Jack smiled softly. She's 10 going on 30, loves puzzles, hates peas, wants a dog, thinks I'm a superhero even when I can't afford ice cream. Evelyn's expression warmed. You're raising her alone. Since her mom passed cancer, Lily was 6. He swallowed his throat suddenly dry. We lost our house 6 months later. Been trying to rebuild ever since. And yet, you smile, she said. Jack shrugged. Lily deserves a dad who believes in better days. Evelyn didn't respond right away. She stood, walked slowly to the window and leaned against the frame. The sunlight touched her hair, turning it the color of old gold. I've forgotten how to believe in better days, she whispered. Jack rose slowly, dusting off his knees. Maybe you just need someone to remind you. Evelyn turned, and for the first time since he met her, Jack saw her defenses lower. Not in fear or fragility, but in willingness. I don't know what this is, Jack, she said. These conversations. But I do know it's the first time in a long while I've felt seen. Jack nodded, choosing his words carefully. Maybe it doesn't have to be anything yet. Maybe it's just two people figuring things out. One bookshelf at a time. Evelyn laughed, truly laughed, and the sound surprised them both. God, you're strange, she said, but there was no insult in it. Strange has been working okay for me so far. She looked at him a moment longer, then crossed the room and held out her hand. Come by again tomorrow. Jack hesitated just a moment, then shook it, his grip firm but gentle. I will, but you'll need to find another bookshelf. I have a whole building, she said. We'll manage. As Jack left the office, the light in the hallway seemed softer, warmer. Down in the lobby, the world continued as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But something had shifted. Two broken souls had seen each other, and maybe that was where healing began. By the end of the week, Jack Morgan had been called to the 15th floor 3 times, once for a wobbly drawer, once for a desk lamp that didn't turn on until he gently pushed the plug fully into the socket, and once for a bookshelf that suspiciously no longer looked like it needed any fixing. Each time Evelyn Hart greeted him with the same unreadable calm. Each time they talked not about supply closets or tools, but about life memory, regret. Jack wasn't sure what this was turning into. He just knew he didn't dread it, and that alone was rare. On Friday afternoon, he was scrubbing a coffee stain off a conference room rug when an intern poked her head in and said, Mr. Morgan, Ms. Hart would like to see you. Jack looked down at his cleaning gloves, then back up. Now she said it was personal. Jack frowned. Personal was dangerous. Personal could mean boundaries were being crossed, but it could also mean something real. He peeled off the gloves, smoothed back his hair with the reflection of the glass wall as his only mirror, and headed to the top floor. Evelyn was pacing when he arrived, her heels making clipped sounds against the hardwood. She stopped when she saw him gesturing toward the large leather armchair in front of her desk. I need your opinion, she said. Jack sat slowly. That's new. I'm not good at opinions, she added. I usually decide first, apologize later. But this one, it's different. She placed a file on the desk. Jack didn't touch it. Read it, she said softly. He did. His brows slowly drew together as he scanned the first few pages, then the next, and the next. When he looked up, his face was tight with concern. "You're thinking of selling the company?" Evelyn nodded once her jaw clenched. "The board's pressuring me. Profits are solid, but not enough for Wall Street. They want a merger. I've resisted for months." Jack leaned back. "And now?" "Now," she said, exhaling hard. "I'm tired of the power plays. Tired of being expected to smile while I bury what I believe in." Jack was quiet for a moment. Then he closed the file gently. "Let me ask you something," he said. "If Daniel were still here, your husband, what would he say?" Evelyn blinked, her shoulders softened. "He'd ask me why I stopped fighting," she murmured. "He'd tell me this place was always more than numbers." Jack nodded. "Then maybe it still is. But what if I'm not the woman who built this anymore?" Jack didn't hesitate. "You're still her. You're just carrying more now." Their eyes met across the polished wood of the desk. A silence passed filled with understanding. Evelyn turned away, walked to the window. "I hate how easily you see through me." Jack stood too slowly. "I don't see through you. I see with you." She didn't respond, but she stayed by the glass as if his presence made the room feel less high, less lonely. After a moment, she said quietly, "Tell me about your shop." Jack smiled, faintly caught off guard. "What do you want to know?" Everything. He let out a breath and leaned against the window frame a few feet from her. "It was my dad's place. Morgan Auto, small old-school garage down on 5th. He ran it like a family kitchen, coffee brewing all day, radio stuck on country music. I started there at 16, sweeping floors." "Was it enough?" she asked. He smiled, his voice soft. "It was never about enough. It was about meaning. You'd be surprised how many people cry in a garage when their old truck finally dies." She looked over at him. "And you lost it. After Carrie passed, I couldn't keep it going." My hands started shaking from stress. One day I dropped a wrench and almost cracked a customer's engine block. That was the last day I touched a car professionally. And now," he shrugged, "now I clean offices, fix drawers, raise a girl who thinks I hung the moon." Evelyn studied him for a long beat. "You did," Jack raised a brow. "Did what? Hung the moon." For her, that's what love looks like. The compliment landed somewhere between his ribs and his heart. He looked away, unsure how to hold her gaze without something in him unraveling. She walked slowly to her desk and picked up a photo frame, one he hadn't noticed before. It held a picture of Evelyn and Daniel at a vineyard. Her smile in the photo was wide, careless. A different woman. "A different life. I haven't laughed like that in years," she said, placing the frame back down. "Maybe it's time," Jack said gently. "Maybe not like that, but like something." Evelyn smiled faintly, but it was weighed down by thought. Then, as if reaching a quiet decision, she turned to him. "Would you come with me tomorrow?" Jack blinked. "Where my family's farm upstate." "It's where Daniel and I used to go to clear our heads. I go alone sometimes, but it feels too quiet now." Jack hesitated. "You sure you want to bring your janitor along?" Evelyn met his eyes. "I'm not inviting my janitor. Jack, I'm inviting you." There it was again, that unflinching honesty. She didn't play games, didn't soften the blow or lace her words with implication. She just meant them. Jack nodded slowly. "All right, just don't expect me to wear a tie." "Wouldn't dream of it." He turned to go but paused at the door. "I still think you should fight for this company." Evelyn smiled. "And I think you might be the first person who said that, without a stock portfolio." Jack chuckled. "I don't have stocks. I have a daughter and an overdrawn bank account. Both sound more human than half my boardroom." And with that, he left heart a little lighter, the cracks in his life a little less sharp. Down the elevator, past the polished lobby, through the cold wind outside, Jack walked home, wondering how the wrong door had become the only one worth walking through. The farmhouse sat on a hill like something out of a painting. Wooden beams worn with time, a front porch that creaked when you walked across it, and wide open skies stretching farther than the eye could hold. It wasn't grand in the way Evelyn Hart's life usually looked, but to Jack and Lily it felt almost magical. "This place is huge," Lily exclaimed, racing up the porch steps. Her sneakers thudded against the planks as she darted toward the old swing that hung from a wooden beam. "Slow down, kiddo," Jack called, though he was smiling. His daughter's delight was contagious. Evelyn stood just behind him, holding a small basket of groceries. She wore jeans and a soft oatmeal-colored sweater, her hair loose for once. Jack hadn't realized until now how different she looked when she wasn't surrounded by glass walls and corner office expectations. "She's full of energy," Evelyn said, watching Lily push herself into the air on the swing. "She's the engine that keeps me going," Jack replied, "though sometimes I think she runs on a different fuel." Like joy and never-ending questions, Evelyn smiled and opened the front door. "Come in. I hope the place isn't too..." Rustic, inside the farmhouse was filled with warmth. The floors bore scuff marks from decades of footsteps, and every wall carried the weight of memory. Framed photographs lined the mantel, a younger Evelyn with muddy jeans laughing in a vineyard. A shot of Daniel on a ladder painting the barn. A dog curled up in a sunbeam. Jack noticed Evelyn pause when she passed a photo of Daniel standing beside a field of sunflowers. Her fingers brushed the edge of the frame just briefly and then moved on. "Lily," she said, turning toward the girl, "would you like to help me make some sandwiches?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "Can I toast the bread?" "Only if you promise not to burn it." Jack stepped back, watching his daughter skip into the kitchen, beside a billionaire who looked more like a big sister than the CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation. He followed slowly, unsure where he fit in this strange new equation. In the kitchen, Lily climbed onto a stool while Evelyn laid out ingredients. There was a softness to her movements, a careful attentiveness that Jack hadn't seen before. She handed Lily a butter knife and showed her how to spread mayo. "You've done this before," Jack said from the doorway. Evelyn looked up. Daniel loved to cook. He believed sandwiches were the key to emotional stability. Jack chuckled. "Can't argue with that." They ate outside on a wooden picnic table beneath a canopy of trees just beginning to shift toward autumn. A soft wind rustled through the leaves, and somewhere nearby a bird called lazily into the afternoon light. Lily chattered as she ate completely at ease. Evelyn listened, genuinely interested, laughing at the girl's stories, nodding solemnly, when Lily declared that third grade was a real pressure cooker. "You're very wise." Evelyn said, "Dad says I'm 9 going on 50. Lily replied, biting into her sandwich. Jack grinned. "She's not wrong." When they finished, Evelyn suggested a walk. They followed an old dirt path that wound through the back of the property, passing an old apple orchard in a dried-up stream bed. At one point, Lily ran ahead, chasing a blue jay that flitted from tree to tree. Jack and Evelyn walked behind more slowly. "This place means something to you," Jack said quietly. "It was our escape," she replied. "Daniel and I came here when the city got too loud, when the pressure built up and we forgot how to breathe. He used to say the silence out here was holy." Jack nodded. "I get that." They reached an old wooden bench, half covered in moss, and sat down. Evelyn glanced ahead at Lily, who was now picking wildflowers with intense concentration. "She's good for you," she said softly. "She's the best part of me," Jack replied. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "It's strange, Jack. I built my whole life to keep people out. Power, distance, control. Those were the rules. But your daughter walks into my kitchen like she owns it, and suddenly, the rules don't seem to matter." Jack smiled gently. "She has that effect." Evelyn turned to him. "So do you." There it was again, that honest, unvarnished truth. Evelyn carried like a hidden scar. Jack looked down at his hands. "I'm no one special, Evelyn. Just a guy who fixes things and tries to raise his kid, right?" "But that's just it," she said. "You don't need to be special to matter. You show up, you listen. You make people feel seen. That's rarer than any degree or job title." Jack didn't know how to respond, so he didn't try. He just let the weight of her words settle. After a while, Lily ran up to them with a fistful of flowers. "Miss Evelyn, I made you a bouquet. It's not from a store, but I think it's pretty." Evelyn accepted the offering like it was made of gold. "It's perfect." "Thank you, sweetheart." Lily turned to Jack. "Can we come back here again?" Daddy Jack glanced at Evelyn, whose expression had softened into something that almost looked like hope. "If it's all right with Miss Evelyn," he said. Evelyn nodded. "You're welcome anytime." As the sun began to dip behind the trees, they headed back toward the house. Jack carried Lily piggyback most of the way, her arms looped around his neck, head resting on his shoulder. And Evelyn, walking a few steps behind them, realized something she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't lonely anymore. She was full. Not in the way that boardrooms or headlines could fill her, but in the way that mattered, the way that healed, the kind of full you only felt when someone else's joy had found room in your heart. The next time Jack brought Lily to the farmhouse, the late September wind had begun to carry the sharp scent of dry leaves and distant chimney smoke. Summer was fading, replaced by a crispness that made your skin tingle and your heart feel strangely nostalgic. It was the kind of day that made you think about how fast time moved, how the things we loved could slip through our fingers if we weren't paying attention. Evelyn greeted them on the porch wearing boots, jeans, and a flannel shirt rolled up at the sleeves. Jack did a double take. Not because she wasn't stunning, she always was, but because she looked easy, natural, unburdened. Like someone who belonged to the earth and not just the skyline. Lily, Evelyn said warmly, I need a sous chef today. Are you ready? Lily grinned. Do I get to wear an apron? Only if you promise not to wipe your hands on it. Deal. The two disappeared inside, giggling as they vanished into the kitchen. Jack remained on the porch for a beat, leaning against the wooden railing, watching the trees sway. A few red and gold leaves danced across the grass. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about overdue bills or broken appliances, or the ache in his back from too many nights on a too thin mattress. He was thinking about Evelyn's laugh. He was thinking about the way she watched Lily, not politely, but with genuine wonder. Like Lily's every word reminded her how to breathe again. Jack stepped inside to find them mid-pie making. The counter was a happy mess of flour and apple peels. Evelyn was gently helping Lily crimp the crust edges, while the girl narrated her own process with the confidence of a TV chef. I call this the ruffle flour edge, Lily declared. That's a very sophisticated technique, Evelyn replied, eyes sparkling. Jack cleared his throat. Need a taste tester? Only if you've had your shots, Lily said straight-faced, then burst into laughter. Evelyn chuckled and handed Jack a spoon of warm apple filling. What do you think he tasted? I think this is the first thing I've eaten this week that didn't come from a vending machine. You poor man, Evelyn said, we'll fix that. After the pies went into the oven, Evelyn suggested they walk down to the greenhouse. My dad built it after Mom passed, she explained as they walked through the orchard. He said growing things helped him remember that life keeps going, even when it breaks your heart. Jack nodded, understanding more than he wanted to admit. The greenhouse was humble, an arched structure of glass and wood, but inside it was alive. Rows of herbs and early autumn vegetables thrived under the filtered light. The air was warm and fragrant, and something about the space made Jack feel like he was standing inside Evelyn's past. He taught me how to tend every one of these, she said, kneeling beside a row of rosemary. It's the only kind of patience I ever learned willingly. Jack knelt beside her, his voice low. You still miss them, don't you? Your parents all the time, she admitted. But not just them. I miss who I was when they were around. Simpler, less calculated. Jack studied her. You're not as calculated as you think. She met his eyes, and for a second the guarded expression dropped. You make me feel unfinished, she said. Jack blinked. Is that a good thing, I think? So she replied. It means there's still something left to grow. They fell into a quiet rhythm, working beside each other, trimming, watering, even planting a few new shoots. Lily played just outside collecting rocks she declared to be rare gemstones and assigning them names like Princess Sparkle and King Pebble. As the sky began to dim, they walked back toward the house with Lily skipping ahead. Can I come back next weekend? She asked. Evelyn smiled. Of course, this place is yours now too. Inside the pie filled the farmhouse with warmth. They ate at the long oak table that had probably hosted 100 family meals before them. Jack watched Evelyn laugh with Lily and thought about all the dinners he'd eaten alone. Silent, quick, practical. He hadn't realized how much he missed the sound of joy at the dinner table. After dessert, Lily grew drowsy, her head tipping onto Jack's arm. I should get her home, he said softly, brushing her hair back. School night, Evelyn walked them to the door. The porch light cast a soft glow across her face. She's special, Evelyn whispered. She saved me, Jack replied. There was a beat of silence. Then Evelyn said, so did you. Jack looked at her, then not just as a man grateful for kindness, but as someone who saw her fully, the cracks, the strength, the softness that was finally allowed to breathe. And he realized something: the farm didn't just remind Evelyn of what she'd lost. It was becoming the place where she rediscovered what she still had left to give. As they stepped off the porch, Evelyn called after him. "Jack," he turned. "You've done more here in a few weekends than some people do in years." Jack shrugged, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "All I did was show up." "Exactly," she said. The wind picked up as he carried Lily to the truck, leaves spinning around his boots like tiny golden miracles. And Evelyn stood on the porch watching them disappear into the twilight, the taste of apple and cinnamon still on her tongue, and something new in her heart, a kind of hope she hadn't dared feel in years. The Monday after their visit to the farmhouse, Jack walked into Hartwell Tower with a strange lightness in his step. He wasn't used to the feeling, this subtle sense that the ground beneath his feet had steadied just slightly as he passed through the security gates and gave a polite nod to the receptionist. He caught himself humming a tune Lily had made up the night before. Something about a pie that could fix the world. He was halfway to the maintenance storage room when he noticed the shift. It wasn't anything obvious. No one pointed fingers or stared outright, but there was a stiffness in the air. A few passing employees didn't return his greeting. One man, suited and polished, gave him a long, appraising look and whispered something to a woman beside him. She raised an eyebrow. Jack's gut tensed. In the elevator, he overheard two junior staffers whispering behind him. "Brought his daughter to the farm. Can you believe it? No way, that's got to be against like 10 policies. Bet she thinks he's harmless." That's how it always starts. The doors opened. Jack stepped off, jaw tight, trying to shake off the unease, but it clung to him like wet clothes. Later that afternoon, he was called to replace a light fixture in the executive conference room. As he worked silently on the ceiling panel, voices floated in from the adjacent hallway. "She's losing her grip. It's unprofessional." The CEO fraternizing with a janitor, and a single dad, no less. "You know how this ends: scandal, distraction. Someone always gets hurt." The words were low, sharp, intentional. Jack didn't recognize the voices, but that wasn't the point. They were talking about him and about Evelyn. By the time he made it back to the basement locker room, his hands were shaking, not from anger, but from that familiar, worn-in feeling being out of place. Like a guest in a house where everyone else had memorized the rules. He sat on the bench, staring at the concrete floor, trying to catch his breath. Was he hurting her reputation just by existing in her orbit? Was Lily bright kind? Lily now a target of judgment because he couldn't keep his distance. His phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. "Come up when you're done. I want your thoughts on something." Jack stared at the screen. For the first time in weeks, he hesitated. He didn't go. Evelyn waited. She paced her office twice, then checked her phone again. No reply. She tried not to feel disappointed. Maybe he got busy. Maybe Lily needed something. But beneath the logic, her heart thudded with that old familiar ache, the one that told her no one ever stayed once the whispers started. By morning, the rumors had reached the boardroom. Victor Langston, head of corporate strategy, stood with his arms crossed as Evelyn walked in. "Morning," she said crisply. Setting her tablet on the table, "Ms. Hart," he replied coolly. "A moment before we begin." She nodded, waiting as the others filed out of the room. When it was just the two of them, Victor stepped closer. "I hope you'll forgive the directness," he said, "but there's been concern." She raised an eyebrow. "About optics." Ah, there it was. The word that always surfaced when people didn't have the courage to say what they really meant. Victor cleared his throat. "It's come to our attention that you've been spending a significant amount of time with one of the janitorial staff off-site, on personal property, with his child present." Evelyn folded her arms. "Are we policing lunch breaks now? This isn't about lunch, it's about image influence investors. You built this company's credibility on being untouchable, strategic. If it starts to look like you're emotionally compromised," her laugh was quiet but razor-edged. "Emotionally compromised." How poetic. Victor held his ground. "You're free to make your own choices, but the consequences aren't always yours alone." She stepped closer. "If this company can't survive me..." Having a human moment, then maybe it doesn't deserve to survive. She walked out before he could reply. That evening, Jack stood outside the building long after his shift ended. He held his phone thumb, hovering over Evelyn's name. His heart was still tangled in the voices he'd heard, the way people looked at him, like he was a problem to be managed. He'd been a problem before, for school districts that didn't know how to accommodate a grieving child, for clients who didn't want family drama in their mechanic shop, for a world that didn't quite know where to place a single dad with calloused hands and a daughter who still believed in fairy tales. He didn't want to be a problem for Evelyn. He turned to leave, then stopped. There she was, standing by her car, coat wrapped around her like armor, but her face was open. Raw, she saw him and didn't hesitate. "You didn't come yesterday." Jack looked down. "I heard what people are saying." "So did I," she said. "I don't want to make things harder for you." Evelyn took a step closer. "Jack, you didn't make anything harder. You made it matter, but your position isn't worth anything if I can't choose who I trust. Who I let in." Jack finally met her gaze. "I just don't want to be the reason you're hurt." "You're not," she said firmly. The silence. The years of loneliness. That hurt you? Don't. They stood there in the wind-tossed quiet of the parking garage, two people who had spent their lives bracing for abandonment and now suddenly had a choice. Evelyn reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a small paper bag. "I was going to give this to Lily," she said, handing it over. "A book I found used, but it looked like something she'd love." Jack opened it slowly. Inside was a secret garden cover, soft with aged pages slightly worn at the edges. "She's going to love this," he said, voice thick. "I hope so." They stood for a long moment. Then Jack said softly, "I want to stay, but only if you're sure." Evelyn didn't blink. "I said it once, Jack, and I'll say it again." Her voice didn't waver. "Stay with me." The leaves had begun to fall in earnest now. Mornings came with a bite in the air, and dusk arrived before Jack was ready. In the city, autumn meant more traffic, more gray skies, more people rushing to nowhere in particular. But at Hartwell Tower, something else had shifted, something quieter. Jack was back to working quietly behind the scenes, fixing a jammed copier, replacing light bulbs, mopping after hours when the offices turned to ghost towns of forgotten coffee cups and locked screens. He hadn't seen Evelyn in days, not since their conversation in the parking garage, not since she handed him the book for Lily and told him once again, "Stay with me," and he wanted to stay. But now he wasn't sure how people still talked. The whispers had grown fainter but hadn't disappeared. He could feel them in the half-second pauses when he entered a room, and the glances, traded behind spreadsheets and phone calls. It wasn't anger he felt, it was exile. He wasn't fired, he wasn't scolded. He just wasn't seen anymore, not in the ways that mattered. So he kept his head down. He worked, he waited. And then one Thursday morning, as he was repairing a faulty heating vent in the East Wing, he heard a sound he hadn't expected. A voice, Evelyn's voice. "No, I'm not postponing the meeting, and I don't need a PR strategy for being a human being." She turned a corner, walking briskly beside two suited men, her heels clicking across the tile. Her tone was even, but there was a fire beneath it. "If we're building a company that falls apart because I invited a little girl to make a pie, then we failed before we started." Jack froze in place, crouched by the vent, hands still holding a screwdriver. Evelyn saw him. Their eyes met. And for the first time in days, she smiled. It wasn't wide or showy. It was soft, steady, reassuring. He smiled back. The next day, Evelyn didn't call him upstairs. She didn't text. But late that afternoon, as Jack was finishing up in the service hall, an envelope was slid under the break room door. No logo, no return address, just his name written in pen. He opened it slowly. Inside was a card. Simple, cream-colored, handwritten. "Sometimes the storm needs to settle before we see what's worth protecting. I haven't changed my mind. Come if you want Sunday. The farm, just us." Jack read it twice. Then again. For the first time in what felt like weeks, he exhaled, without realizing he'd been holding his breath. Sunday came quietly. Lily was with a friend for a birthday party, and Jack found himself driving to the farmhouse alone, unsure whether it would feel emptier or more honest without his daughter there. The gravel crunched under his boots as he stepped out of the truck. The wind moved through the trees like an old song, familiar and worn. He approached the porch slowly, expecting Evelyn to meet him at the door, but she wasn't there. He knocked once. No answer. He opened the door cautiously. Inside, the house was warm. A fire crackled softly in the living room. Hearth on the table, 2 mugs already poured tea still steaming, a folded blanket, a note. Greenhouse back path. Jack smiled to himself and headed out the kitchen door, following the well-worn trail behind the orchard. The glass structure glowed like a lantern in the early twilight, its windows fogged slightly from the warmth inside. He stepped through the door and paused. Evelyn was there, kneeling beside a row of potted chrysanthemums, her sleeves rolled up dirt on her palms. She looked up when she heard the creak of the door. "Hey," she said simply. Jack stepped closer. "You still talk to flowers?" "Only the ones that listen," she said with a small grin. He knelt beside her. They worked side by side for a while, in comfortable silence, trimming, watering, not speaking too much. The warmth of the greenhouse wrapped around them like a second skin. At one point, Evelyn glanced sideways. "I thought you might not come. I wasn't sure I should." She nodded, still focused on a stubborn root. "Because of what people say, because of what it could cost you." Jack said Evelyn stopped what she was doing. She sat back on her heels and wiped her hands on a cloth nearby. "You know, when Daniel died, the board sent flowers. White lilies, classy, expensive, and not one of them called to ask how I was." Jack looked at her gently. "I kept building after that." She continued, "Building walls, building power, and I was good at it. I still am. But I also forgot how to let something grow inside the walls." Jack's voice was quiet. "That's not easy to remember." "No, but you and Lily, you didn't come here looking for anything. You just showed up. And somehow that broke something open." They sat in silence, the only sound, the soft rustle of leaves and the faint hum of warmth from the greenhouse vents. "I want you to be here, Jack," she said finally. "But not if you're constantly wondering whether you belong." He turned toward her fully. "I do wonder," he admitted. "I'm not from this world. Evelyn, I don't know the right fork for salad or what wine to bring to a boardroom dinner, but I know how to show up. I know how to stay when it matters. I know how to raise a little girl who still believes people are good." Evelyn reached across the space between them, placing her hand on his. "That's more than most people in my world could ever say." He looked down at her hand, in his soft, warm, no longer guarded. Then he looked up and saw something in her expression he hadn't dared name before. Peace. Maybe not permanent, maybe not unshakable, but real and shared. Outside, the sky deepened into a quiet, burnished purple. The first star appeared. Jack stood slowly and offered her his hand. "Come on," he said, "let's go have that tea before it gets cold." Evelyn smiled, took his hand and rose. As they walked back toward the house, side by side beneath the orchard branches. There were no grand confessions, no dramatic declarations, only 2 people moving toward warmth together. By the time October set in, fully the leaves on the trees around the Hartwell farmhouse had turned into a riot of gold, crimson, and amber. Evelyn stood on the porch one late afternoon, holding 2 mugs of cider, her breath fogging gently in the air. She watched as Jack's old pickup truck made its way up the gravel path, kicking up dust and fallen leaves in its wake. She smiled without realizing it. Jack parked and climbed out his denim jacket, zipped halfway and his hands tucked into his pockets. "You look like you're in a Norman Rockwell painting," he said as he stepped up onto the porch. "And you look like you just repaired a tractor," she replied. "I did." Evelyn handed him one of the mugs. "Perfect, you've earned this." He took a sip. "Spiked cinnamon," she said with mock seriousness. "That's as wild as I get these days." They stood side by side in silence for a moment, watching the wind sweep across the hills. It had been a quiet few weeks since their greenhouse talk, an unspoken agreement to move slower, more gently. They hadn't defined anything. They didn't need to. The moments spoke for themselves, but something had been stirring in Evelyn, a restlessness she hadn't voiced. Jack noticed it in the way she paced more when she talked, how her smile, while still warm, didn't quite reach her eyes. He waited. He didn't push. He knew sometimes people needed to sit with a feeling before they could put words to it. That moment came now. "I saw Daniel last week," she said, still facing the horizon. Jack stiffened slightly. He turned to her quietly. His mother called Evelyn, continued. Said she was cleaning out the storage unit and found some old things. Photos, letters. She asked if I wanted to come pick them up. Did you? Jack asked gently. I did. Evelyn walked down the steps, her boots crunching on the gravel. Jack followed. There was this one letter, she said, her voice almost carried off by the wind. Daniel wrote it the week before he died. It wasn't addressed to me, just notes, observations. Like he was trying to remind himself what mattered. She pulled a small folded paper from her coat pocket. I brought it. Jack took it, unfolded it slowly, and read. If Evelyn ever finds this, I hope she remembers that strength isn't silence, that she's allowed to fall apart, that letting someone in isn't weakness, it's survival. I'd tell her this in person, but if I don't get the chance, I hope she already knows. Jack looked up at her. That's a lot. Evelyn nodded. It is. I think he knew you better than anyone. Jack said, and yet I ignored it. She said, after he was gone, I did the opposite of what he asked. I armored up, I shut down, and I hurt people who tried to care. Jack didn't speak. He knew what was coming. I need to apologize to you, she said, for shutting you out after the whispers started, for not standing up for you sooner, for making you feel like you didn't belong. Jack looked down at the note again, then folded it and handed it back. You don't owe me anything. Evelyn. Yes, I do, she said, meeting his gaze. You showed up. You gave me in this place more kindness than I knew how to handle. And I pulled away when it got complicated. Jack took a step closer. You were scared. I still am, she admitted. But I'm more scared of going back to how I used to live. The loneliness, it's too loud now. Jack placed his hand gently over hers. You're not the only one with regrets. Evelyn looked at him, eyebrows lifted. I should have come to you when things got hard. Instead, I let the noise convince me I was the problem. He gave a soft chuckle. It's been my reflex for years. Keep my head down. Don't rock the boat. Don't cost anyone anything. She stepped closer. Jack, you didn't cost me anything. You gave me a reason to want more than I've allowed myself. The words hung in the air, weighty and vulnerable. They stood like that, hands touching, breath visible in the chill, for a long moment before Evelyn said, There's something I want to show you. She led him back into the house and through the hallway to her office. Jack had only ever peeked into it. Mahogany shelves, an old writing desk, a large window that framed the fields like a painting. But today it looked different. The furniture had been rearranged, the desk pushed to the side. In its place, boxes filled with binders, and paper sat labeled in Evelyn's neat script. New layout. Jack asked, new department. She replied, It's not official yet, but I'm creating a community initiative within Hartwell Group, a fund and outreach program for employees who are single parents, caretakers, or in financial transition. Jack turned to her slowly. You're serious. I'm starting with one pilot program. Medical support, childcare assistance, flexible scheduling. It's not charity, it's respect. Jack blinked, overwhelmed. Why? Because of you, she said. Because of Lily. Because every day you showed up with dignity and grace, and this company never once asked how you managed it. It just took the labor and ignored the life behind it. She took a breath. I don't want to lead that way anymore. Jack stepped forward. What do you need from me? Evelyn smiled. I want you to help run it. Jack stared at her. You want me in management? No, she said, grinning. I want you in leadership. There's a difference. You understand people, Jack. You know what it means to fight quietly and love loudly. That's what this needs. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. Gratitude, disbelief, fear, and wonder collided all at once. I'd have to talk to Lily, he said finally. It'd mean longer hours, maybe even more time here. She's already claimed the kitchen as her own, Evelyn said with a laugh. I think she'd be fine. Jack looked around the room, the warm lamplight, the boxes filled with possibility, the woman standing before him with her guard down and her heart open, and nodded. All right, he said. Let's build something worth believing in. And Evelyn, for the first time since Daniel's death, felt the full weight of healing settle into her bones. Not as an ending, but as a beginning. Outside, the wind had calmed. Inside, the future began to take shape, not behind walls, but beside someone who stayed. The morning was overcast with low clouds stretched across the sky like a heavy blanket. Jack drove in silence. Lily dozing in the back seat, her head tilted against the window. The GPS had been turned off miles ago. He didn't need directions to where they were going. Evelyn hadn't asked for them to come, not directly. But when she called the night before, her voice had been quieter than usual. Less composed. There's somewhere I need to go tomorrow. I don't want to go alone. She didn't need to say more now as he pulled onto the gravel road leading to a small hilltop cemetery just beyond the town line. Jack felt the familiar weight return to his chest. The one he carried at Carrie's funeral. The one that never quite leaves you, no matter how many years pass or how many smiles come. After Evelyn was already there, when they arrived, she stood under a tree near the back row, her coat drawn tight, one hand resting on the simple gray headstone. She turned when she heard the truck, her expression unreadable. Jack parked and stepped out quietly. Lily stirred, rubbing her eyes, but stayed inside the cab as he approached. "Hey," he said softly. Evelyn nodded. "Thank you for coming." He joined her beside the grave. The stone was smooth, clean, well kept. It read, "Daniel Hart, beloved husband, friend, and anchor, 1978-2019. Jack removed his cap, holding it in his hands. The wind rustled the trees, gently scattering yellow leaves across the grass, like quiet offerings. "I used to talk to him here," Evelyn said, not looking at Jack. "Even when I didn't believe in that sort of thing, I'd come on Sundays, tell him what I was struggling with, what I was too proud to admit to anyone else." Jack stayed silent, giving her space. "He was the first person who ever made me feel safe. Really safe, like I didn't have to prove anything to earn his love." She turned to face him now, her eyes glistening, but steady. "And you've done that too." Jack's throat tightened. "Evelyn," she held up a hand. "Let me finish. I didn't bring you here to ask for permission. I brought you here to make peace." She knelt down and placed a small bouquet of field daisies at the base of the headstone. "They weren't store-bought. They weren't grand. They were honest, Daniel," she whispered. "I still love you. But I'm starting to understand something you always tried to teach me. That love doesn't have to stay stuck in the past to be real." Her voice broke slightly. "I've met someone who sees me. Not the title, not the polished version, just me." She placed her palm flat against the stone. "And I think you'd like him." Jack felt the sting behind his eyes, the way grief and love often sit side by side without asking permission. Evelyn stood slowly, brushing the dirt from her hands. "He was a good man, Jack. I can tell," Jack said. There was a long silence, then a soft voice behind them broke it. "Miss Evelyn." They turned to see Lily standing a few feet away, her hands clasped in front of her, her braid falling over one shoulder. Evelyn smiled gently. "Hey, sweetheart," Lily stepped forward cautiously. "Is this the man you told me about? The one who planted the apple trees?" Evelyn nodded. Lily approached the grave, then knelt beside it and whispered something so quietly that Jack couldn't hear. When she stood, Evelyn placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "What did you say to him?" Jack asked as they walked back toward the truck. Lily shrugged. "Just that I'd take good care of you both." Jack's heart squeezed, but he didn't let it show. He opened the door and helped Lily into the back seat. As they pulled away, Evelyn kept her eyes on the mirror, watching the grave, until it disappeared behind the bend in the road. Back at the farmhouse, the light had changed. The fire was lit, soup simmered on the stove, and Lily had fallen asleep again this time, curled up on the couch with a book tucked under her arm. Evelyn poured 2 mugs of tea and sat beside Jack near the window. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For letting me say goodbye without feeling like I was leaving anything behind." Jack took a sip of tea. "Love doesn't leave. It just grows new roots." She turned to him, her voice quiet. "Do you think it's possible to love again without making it feel like a betrayal?" Jack didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached over and gently took her hand in his. "I think love is like sunlight," he said. "It doesn't stop shining just because the seasons change. It finds new windows, new warmth." Evelyn's eyes filled again, but this time the tears didn't fall from grief. They fell from the quiet relief of being understood. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," he said. "But I'm here." They sat in silence, the kind that didn't need filling. Outside, the wind shifted again this time, bringing with it the scent of apples and wood smoke. and the possibility of something new. And inside the house, a woman who had once built her life on control, let go of the past without letting go of the love that built her, and the man beside her who had once thought healing was only for other people. Discovered that sometimes the heart does remember, but more importantly, it also learns how to begin again. The first Monday of November arrived cold and clear, with the kind of crisp air that seemed to signal change was not only possible, but already in motion. Jack stood in the mirror of his modest apartment bathroom, tightening a tie with stiff fingers and a skeptical frown. "Still think this is a mistake?" he asked his reflection. Lily, brushing her teeth in the hallway, peeked around the corner. "You look like a principal, but the nice kind," Jack smirked. "Not sure that's a compliment." She grinned with toothpaste foam on her lip. It is an hour later, Jack walked through the front doors of Hartwell Tower, this time not as a maintenance worker, but as the newly appointed Community Outreach Coordinator. It was a title that still felt oversized, like a pair of dress shoes one hadn't grown into yet. He rode the elevator to the 10th floor, a level he'd never had reason to visit before. The new department Evelyn had created was tucked into a bright corner suite. Walls painted soft green, a welcome desk decorated with handmade drawings from employees' kids, and a community board that read, "You're not alone. Let's build something better together." A young assistant greeted him. "Mr. Morgan." Jack smiled awkwardly. "That's me, though you can call me Jack, or hey you. I'll answer to both." She laughed and handed him a clipboard. "We've got 4 families applying for childcare grants this week and 2 single parents trying to balance their shift schedules with elder care. You up for it?" Jack looked at the names on the list, real people, not numbers. Struggling, yes, but showing up, just like he had for years. "I'm up for it." By noon, he'd met with 3 employees, each of them nervous at first, unsure of what this new program actually meant. Jack didn't come in with policies or polished speeches. He listened. He asked questions no one ever had before. "What's the hardest part of your day? When do you feel unseen? How can we help without making you feel like charity?" And by the end of each conversation, there were handshakes, a few tears, and the same quiet realization. This place might finally care. Later that afternoon, Evelyn stopped by. She wore a gray coat and a soft scarf, her makeup lighter than usual, her hair swept back loosely. "How's your first day?" she asked. Jack leaned back in his chair and gestured to the stack of folders. "Well, nobody's fired me, and I only spilled coffee on 1 application form." "That's practically executive material," she said. He grinned. "It feels different sitting on this side of the desk. It's like I'm still fixing things, but now it's not broken faucets. It's people who've been forgotten." Evelyn's smile was soft but proud. "That's why I wanted you here. Not for your resume, for your compass." She walked to the window and looked out at the city. "You know, when I took over this company, I thought strength meant never asking for help, never admitting weakness. But that's a brittle kind of power, and it breaks people." Jack stood beside her. "Real strength is knowing when to lean in and when to let someone lean on you." She turned to him, then something unspoken, lingering in her eyes. "I've got a dinner tonight." "With the board?" Jack raised an eyebrow. "Fancy affair, very," she said with a smirk. "But I'm going to tell them we're expanding the program. Company-wide benefits, flexibility, real support. Even if it means they balk at the budget." Jack studied her. "You sure you want to pick that fight tonight?" "I'm not picking a fight," she said. "I'm building a foundation. They just don't know it yet." He reached over, gently adjusting a stray thread on her coat. "You're still the strongest person in the room, Evelyn. You're just finally using that strength for people who never thought they had a voice." She didn't answer, just looked at him with a kind of quiet affection that said more than words could. As she left, she paused at the door. "By the way, I've been thinking that swing out at the farmhouse needs a second one. For balance." Jack tilted his head. "You expecting more visitors? I'm expecting company," she said with a soft smile. "The kind that stays." That weekend, Evelyn invited a few families from the program out to the farm. Jack helped carry bags of apples to the porch, while Lily led 2 younger children to the barn to see the goats. The air was filled with laughter, the smell of spiced cider, and the sound of leaves crunching under boots. Evelyn moved among the guests not like a CEO, but like a host pouring cider, sharing recipes, holding babies without hesitation. One young mother pulled Jack aside and whispered, "I don't know how she does it. Run a company and still make time for this." Jack looked toward Evelyn, who was kneeling in the grass, helping a toddler tie her shoelace. "She started making time," he said, and that changed everything. Later that evening, after everyone had left and Lily was fast asleep in the guest room, Jack and Evelyn sat on the porch beneath a blanket. The stars were sharp and close above them, like scattered promises. Jack turned to her. "You're not afraid of what people say anymore, are you?" "Are you?" Evelyn thought for a moment. I care less about the story they tell and more about the one I'm writing." Jack looked at her with quiet reverence. "And this chapter," he asked. She took his hand. "This chapter," she said, "feels like the beginning of something worth staying for." It started as just another Monday. Jack was running late. Lily's sock had mysteriously vanished in the laundry. Again, the truck was slow to turn over, and a spilled bowl of oatmeal meant changing shirts at the last minute. By the time he reached Hartwell Tower, the sky was already bright with soft November sun, and his coffee had gone lukewarm. He didn't expect anything unusual. But when he reached the 10th floor office, now affectionately nicknamed the Green Wing by staff, something caught his eye. A bright pink sticky note was plastered to the glass door, carefully written in bubble letters, uneven but bold. "Miss Evelyn, I think my dad likes you. You should stay with us." Lily. Jack froze. The handwriting was unmistakable. He opened the door slowly, scanning the room, hoping by some miracle Evelyn hadn't seen it yet. Too late. She was standing by the break room table holding a coffee mug, her eyes already fixed on the note. "Morning," she said, a smile tugging at her lips. Jack rubbed the back of his neck, cheeks coloring. I wasn't aware my daughter had taken up freelance matchmaking." "She's very intuitive," Evelyn replied. Jack sighed, walking over to peel the note off the glass, but she stopped him. "No, leave it." He looked at her surprised. She sipped her coffee, studying him over the rim of the mug. "You don't want her to be wrong, do you?" Jack let out a breath that felt like it had been sitting in his chest for years. "No, I don't." They stood there for a moment, the room still around them, the weight of so many unsaid things finally coming to the surface. Jack slid the note back onto the glass and gently smoothed the corners. "She has good instincts," he murmured. "She gets them from you," Evelyn replied. There was a pause. "Evelyn," Jack began this. "Whatever this is between us, it's not just about Lily or the farm or the job, I know. And I don't want to pretend anymore. Like I'm just grateful to be part of it. I am grateful. But that's not the whole story." He took a breath, then looked her in the eye. "I care about you, the real you. The woman who plants rosemary in worn jeans and fixes shoelaces for strangers. The woman who fought for people who didn't know how to ask for help." Evelyn's eyes glistened. "That woman didn't exist before you. Or if she did, I hadn't seen her in a long time." Jack stepped closer. "I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to keep showing up." "I will," she said. "But only if you do too." He reached for her hand. "I already did," he said quietly. "I opened the wrong door, and I never looked back." Later that evening, Jack picked Lily up from school. As they walked to the truck, she skipped beside him with the easy bounce of a child who hadn't yet learned the weight of caution. "Did you see my note?" she asked. "I did. Did it work?" Jack gave her a teasing glance. "Work?" "You know," Lily said, eyes wide. "Did she say she wants to stay?" Jack paused. He knelt in front of her, brushing a leaf out of her braid. "She didn't have to say it. Sometimes you just know." Lily grinned. "I told you she was your favorite." "She's more than that," Jack said softly. "She's ours now." Lily beamed and threw her arms around his neck. "Does that mean we're a real family?" Jack's throat tightened. He hugged her close. "We've been a real family," he said. "Now we're just a little bigger." At the farmhouse that weekend, the change was subtle but unmistakable. A second swing had been hung from the old porch beam. Just as Evelyn had mentioned, Jack installed it himself, though Lily insisted on testing it first. Evelyn watched from the steps, her hands wrapped around a mug of cider, her smile soft and full. The kitchen, once quiet and orderly, now buzzed with the sounds of laughter and clanging pots. Evelyn taught Lily how to make cinnamon rolls, and Jack fixed a creaky cupboard, that had refused to stay shut for over a year. In the evenings, they read aloud by the fireplace. Lily would fall asleep curled under Evelyn's arm, and Jack would sit across from them, heart so full it almost hurt. And one night, just as Evelyn was turning off the lamp in the living room, Jack reached into his pocket. It wasn't a ring. Not yet. It was a small, folded note, a reply to the one Lily had written weeks ago. He handed it to Evelyn without a word. She unfolded it slowly. Inside, in Jack's neat, deliberate handwriting, it read, "Yes, we'd like you to stay. Not just for dinner, not just for weekends, for everything." Jack and Lily. Evelyn looked up at him, eyes shining laughter and tears blending together. "I already have," she said. They stood in the glow of the hearth, the warmth not just from firelight, but from something more lasting. Commitment, belonging, and the quiet joy of finding a place and people worth staying for. The first snow of the season arrived like a secret, soft, quiet, unexpected. It dusted the fields behind the farmhouse with a blanket of white coating, the orchard branches and frosting, the porch railings in a delicate shimmer. Jack stood at the kitchen window early that morning, sipping coffee and watching as Lily pressed her face against the glass, with the breathless wonder only a child could summon. "She's been waiting for this since August," he said with a quiet smile. Evelyn, standing beside him in one of Jack's old flannel shirts and fuzzy socks, glanced out with sleepy amusement. "She's been planning snow angels for 3 weeks. Outside, Lily bolted into the yard in her oversized coat and mismatched mittens, arms outstretched, spinning like a top. "She's not the only one who's been waiting for something." Jack said, his voice softer now. Evelyn looked at him. Jack didn't speak right away. He just reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small envelope, thicker than the last note he'd written, her carefully sealed. She raised an eyebrow as she took it, her hands still warm from the mug she'd been holding. Slowly, she opened the flap and pulled out the paper inside. It was a deed to the farmhouse, her name still there. But now beneath it, 2 others, Jack Morgan and Lily Morgan. Her breath caught. "I had a lawyer friend help me." Jack said, "The place is still yours legally, but it's ours now too. Not because we need it to be, because we choose it to be." Evelyn blinked away the sudden sting in her eyes. "You didn't need to do this, I know," he said. "But I wanted to. I want you to know this isn't just a chapter we stumbled into. This is the story I want to stay in." She folded the paper slowly, clutching it in both hands, then looked up at him. "And you're sure," Jack chuckled. "I've never been more sure of anything, except maybe that Lily is about to eat a snowflake and declare it magical." They both turned to the window just as Lily flopped backward into the snow limbs, out like a starfish. "She's making a snow angel." Evelyn said. Jack nodded. "That girl's whole life is an angel in progress." They stood there a moment longer, then Evelyn slipped her hand into his. "So is yours." Later that week, Jack returned to the auto shop he hadn't set foot in for years. Not as an employee, not to ask for work, but to reclaim something. Morgan Auto, with its faded sign and rusted garage doors, had sat vacant since he'd walked away from it after Carrie died. It had become a kind of shrine, a place he couldn't touch because it hurt too much. Now, standing in the doorway, Evelyn beside him, he let the past roll through him like an old song. "It smells the same," he said, "like oil and hope." Evelyn said, grinning. He laughed. "You romanticize everything. You taught me how inside dust coated the workbenches, but the tools still hung in their places. The old coffee maker still sat by the window." A faded photo of Jack's father was tacked to the corkboard above the register. Jack walked to the center of the shop and turned slowly. "You could do something with this place," Evelyn said, her voice gentle. "Something new, a teaching garage, a space for kids who don't know how to dream yet." Jack nodded. "Maybe I could." Then he turned to her. "But only if you'll help me build it." She smiled. "Deal." Thanksgiving came with the smell of roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, and spiced apple pie. The farmhouse was filled with warmth and noise. Friends, co-workers from the new outreach program, families who had once been invisible in boardrooms, but now had a place at the table. Jack carved the turkey while Lily read aloud a thank you poem she'd written at school. It included Evelyn's name 3 times, And thank you to Miss Evelyn who makes the best pie. And thank you for my swing, and thank you for staying. Evelyn squeezed Jack's hand under the table. The room applauded not because the rhyme was perfect, it wasn't, but because it was true. That night after the last dish had been washed and the guests had gone, Jack and Evelyn stepped out onto the porch. The stars above were sharp and clear, scattered across the sky like tiny declarations. You ever think about how it all started? Evelyn asked. Jack nodded. A wrong door. She smiled. There are no wrong doors, just ones we aren't brave enough to open. He reached for her hand. I didn't think I belonged here. Evelyn. Not in your world, not in your life. You didn't belong to it, she said, turning toward him. You changed it. The wind stirred around them, cold but not biting. It carried the scent of wood smoke and earth and the last notes of the season. Evelyn leaned her head on Jack's shoulder. What do you think comes next? She asked. He smiled, eyes on the moonlight dancing across the field. More doors, he said, and this time we walk through them together. And somewhere in the distance, Lily's laughter rang through the night, a sound like home, like hope, like everything that mattered. Because in the end, love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It was about showing up, about staying, and about finding on the other side of an unexpected door someone brave enough to open their heart again. We'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. Your stories, your thoughts, and your presence mean the world to us. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or simply made your day a little warmer, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's the best way to support what we do and to stay connected with more heartfelt stories just like this one. From all of us here, thank you for watching. Take care of yourself and never stop believing in the quiet power of kindness.